I still replay that moment in my head sometimes, the split-second decision I made that changed absolutely everything. And honestly, even now, I'm not entirely sure if I'm a hero or just a supremely petty former employee. I mean, can you imagine walking into an office on a Friday morning, expecting to finalize a massive deal you'd practically spearheaded, only to be told you're fired not for performance, but because the CEO's nephew needed a job? And then, you have the digital keys to the kingdom, the one unread email that proves everything, sitting right there. Was I wrong for deciding to weaponize my final few minutes of corporate access to bring the entire executive team's house of cards crashing down, starting with the CEO? Tell me, honestly, if you were in my shoes, looking at the culmination of 5 years of blood, sweat, and late nights being tossed aside for nepotism, would you have done the same thing? The whole nightmare started, as these things often do, with a seemingly perfect life. I was 29, a dedicated and, frankly, overly enthusiastic clerk at a mid-sized financial consulting firm, Ascend Global. I started in the mailroom right out of college and worked my way up to a pivotal role in the acquisitions department. My job wasn't glamorous. It was the grunt work, the due diligence, the late-night number crunching that no one else wanted to touch. But I loved it. I was good at it. I was known for my attention to detail, the kind of detail that could spot a $50,000 accounting discrepancy in a billion-dollar merger document. I was the safety net, the one who caught the errors that would embarrass the senior partners. Mr. Hawthorne, the CEO, a man whose tailored suits probably cost more than my annual salary, rarely knew my name, but he knew my work. He knew I was the one who made his deals look clean. I was the underestimated engine of his corporate machine, my biggest project, the one that had consumed my life for the last 8 months, was the acquisition of a rival firm, Innovatech. It was a massive, complex deal, worth nearly $500 million, and I was responsible for auditing all their financials and internal communications. This meant I had access to everything, every email, every spreadsheet, every internal memo from both companies related to the deal. The stress was immense, but so was the pride. I was promised a significant bonus and a promotion to Associate VP once the ink dried. I was living on coffee and adrenaline, picturing the moment the deal closed and the new title on my business card. The closing meeting was scheduled for Monday. I was finalizing the last few documents on Friday morning, feeling on top of the world. I was early to the office, the silent, empty building feeling like my personal domain, when I got the summons. The CEO wants to see you now. I walked into the mahogany-paneled boardroom, my chest puffed up with anticipation, expecting a final pat on the back, or perhaps even the bonus check early. Instead, I found Mr. Hawthorne looking supremely uncomfortable, alongside David, the head of HR, who wouldn't meet my eye. Hawthorne gestured to an empty chair, but I remained standing. He cleared his throat, a sign that always meant bad news was coming, and then, without any preamble, he delivered the blow. "Look, I value your work, you know that," he started, the classic, insincere corporate prelude to disaster. "But Ascend Global is moving in a new, leaner direction. We need to streamline some of the back office functions. Effective immediately, your position has been eliminated." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Eliminated, Mr. Hawthorne? I'm closing the Innovatech deal on Monday." I have proprietary knowledge no one else has. You can't eliminate my position. David finally spoke up, a weak apology in his voice. We've already transitioned your final files to a new internal resource. Everything is covered. We appreciate your years of service. Then came the corporate insult, a severance package equivalent to 6 weeks' pay. I was handed an envelope. I looked from the envelope to Hawthorne, who was already checking his watch, clearly done with this unpleasantness. My mind was racing, trying to process the absurdity. $500 million deal, 5 years of loyalty, and I was being replaced by a new internal resource 6 hours before the final weekend. I walked back to my cube in a daze, the envelope feeling like a brick in my hand. It was only when I sat down at my desk, still logged into the system, that I saw it an email marked urgent, private, from Hawthorne to David in HR, sent less than an hour ago. The subject line read, Harry, nephew starting Monday. I clicked it open. The contents were sickeningly brief. It simply stated, per our earlier conversation, confirm clerk's termination is finalized. Nephew, Jason, needs a clean slate and access to the Innovatech files to learn the ropes. The bonus money will cover his first few months. Make sure all his predecessors' access is revoked by noon today. Thanks. It was all there, laid bare. It wasn't streamlining. It wasn't performance. It was a $500 million deal being handed over to a relative, and my promised bonus being converted into his salary, all because I was expendable. The anger that surged through me was unlike anything I had ever felt. It wasn't just losing my job. It was the sheer, cold-blooded disrespect for my work, for my life, for my future. They had taken away everything I'd worked for and were going to use my biggest professional achievement as a training exercise for a privileged, unqualified kid. I looked at the clock. It was 11:37 a.m. I had 23 minutes left before my access was revoked. 23 minutes to decide what kind of person I was going to be. The one who walked away quietly with 6 weeks' pay and swallowed the injustice, or the one who fought back. My initial thought was to go to the press, but I had a non-disclosure agreement, and I knew a drawn-out legal battle would destroy me financially. Then my eyes fell on my monitor, specifically the open window containing the internal communications from the Innovatech acquisition, the full, unvarnished history of every email. And in that moment, an idea formed, a reckless, brilliant, and completely irreversible idea. Over the past 8 months, while digging through Innovatech's darkest secrets, I had stumbled across something I'd flagged as unusual, but ultimately inconsequential to the deal's financials. A pattern of highly suggestive email exchanges between the Innovatech CFO and a senior but minor VP at Ascend Global, specifically discussing a weekend retreat in the Cayman Islands that was conspicuously not listed on any corporate expense report. I'd mentally filed it under minor potential ethical lapse and moved on. But now, my perspective had changed. It wasn't just the Innovatech deal I had access to. I had access to all internal communications, and I remembered an even older, more unsettling internal audit note I had casually glanced at months ago, concerning the personal use of corporate funds by Hawthorne himself. I had dismissed it then, but now I was looking for the sword I could use. I was looking for the perfect, untraceable weapon. So that's the situation I was in. Fired for nepotism, betrayed, with a severance check in my hand, and an open, all-access portal to the darkest secrets of a $500 million corporation on my screen. I had 20 minutes left before I was locked out forever. I had to choose between my ethics and my desire for justice, or maybe just pure, unadulterated revenge. Before I tell you what happened next, what I did with those final few minutes of power, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have just walked away, or would you have risked everything to expose the rot? I took a deep breath, and my fingers flew across the keyboard. I wasn't going to send an email to the press. I wasn't going to send it to the board. I was going to send it to the one person who would have to read it, the one person who would be absolutely ruined by its contents, and the one person who would make sure it got distributed to absolutely everyone else. I opened a new email window. The recipient, Mr. Hawthorne. The subject line, my final contribution to Ascend. Global card, a look behind the curtain. But I wasn't done with the email's content yet. My plan was simple, surgical, and devastating. I wasn't going to attach a single damning document. That was too traceable. Instead, I used my access to find 3 things. First, the exact email string of the Innovatech CFO and our VP, with all the suggestive, non-corporate language about the Cayman trip. Second, I found the internal audit note on Hawthorne's personal use of the corporate jet for family vacations that had been quietly suppressed by David in HR. And third, the most important piece of all, a file name. Not an actual file, but a subtle reference buried in an old forgotten HR memo. The memo was about retention of internal compliance files, and it specifically named a network folder and a password-protected file where all non-standard executive compensation documentation was stored. I knew exactly what that meant. The secret, unapproved, potentially illegal bonuses and side deals that executives award themselves. I didn't have the password, but I had the location, the file name, and the hint of its explosive contents. My final email to Hawthorne was a masterclass in corporate passive aggression mixed with pure venom. It started innocuously. Dear Mr. Hawthorne, thank you for the opportunity to have served Ascend Global. Before my access is fully revoked, I wanted to provide you with one final, comprehensive report on potential long-term liabilities I discovered during my due diligence for the Innovatech deal. Then came the 3 points, each one a precise, targeted torpedo. I mentioned the exact dates, the exact individuals, and the specific damning email subject line for the VP's inappropriate relationship with the Innovatech CFO, effectively linking the 2 deals and throwing a massive wrench into the impending acquisition. I then referenced the suppressed internal audit file number regarding his personal jet usage and named David from HR as the one who buried it, implicating both of them. Finally, I didn't send the file with the secret compensation. I sent the specific instructions on where to find it, the network path, the file name, and the strong implication that I had already downloaded and forwarded a copy to a secure external address. I made it look like I had all the evidence, even though I only had the key to the evidence. The final line of the email was the perfect sign-off. I hope this information assists the company in moving forward with its new, leaner direction. All the best. My name. I hit send at 11:58 a.m. 2 minutes to spare. Then I didn't wait. I physically pulled the Ethernet cable from my desktop, grabbed my meager personal belongings, and walked out. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look back. I just walked out into the Friday rush hour traffic, feeling a profound, unsettling mix of terror and exhilarating freedom. The aftermath was glorious, messy, and swift. I spent the entire weekend staring at my phone, half expecting the police to show up, half expecting a frantic call from an executive offering me my job back and a raise. The call I got was from a former colleague, a friend in the accounting department, on Monday morning. He didn't even say hello. He just whispered, "The whole place is chaos. Hawthorne is barricaded in his office. The Innovatech deal is on hold, possibly dead. David from HR has been suspended pending an investigation. And that email. Everyone knows about the email." I had sent it only to Hawthorne, but I had forgotten the cardinal rule of executive panic. The moment something potentially criminal lands in their inbox, the first thing they do is forward it to their attorney and their co-conspirators. My email, the key to the kingdom, had spread like a virus. The public news broke 3 days later. The Innovatech deal was officially terminated, Ascend Global citing unforeseen internal ethical discrepancies. Hawthorne was gone, a terse press release cited, stepping down to pursue other interests. But everyone knew the truth. David from HR was fired and was now facing an internal investigation regarding the suppression of audit reports. The VP mentioned in the email was immediately put on leave. The information I had so carefully planted, the implication that I had the complete evidence, forced their hands. They couldn't risk a full external investigation that might uncover the real, deep rot of the non-standard executive compensation file I had referenced. They had to cut off the head of the snake before the rest of the body was exposed. They had to make it look like they were cleaning up my discoveries. I never faced any legal action. How could they? The email contained only information I had access to as part of my fiduciary duty, the information they had tasked me with compiling. They couldn't prove I downloaded anything, only that I pointed out their own vulnerabilities on my way out the door. The irony is, I ended up with more than 6 weeks' pay. A lawyer specializing in wrongful termination and whistleblowing contacted me a few weeks later. We negotiated a substantial non-disparagement and settlement agreement from Ascend Global, far more than the original severance, in exchange for my silence and an agreement not to pursue any further action, essentially paying me to keep quiet about the full extent of what I knew. They wanted the entire scandal to disappear, and I was happy to oblige for a significant price. It's been over a year now. I used the settlement money and the network of contacts I quietly cultivated during my time in the trenches to start my own boutique corporate due diligence firm. My specialty, finding the suppressed details and the hidden liabilities that other firms miss. I often think about the irony of it all. They tried to replace me with a clueless nephew to save a few $1,000s on a bonus, and in doing so, they not only lost $500 million in a deal, they cost the CEO his career and ended up paying me a small fortune to walk away. I took a devastating situation, used my intimate knowledge of the system that betrayed me, and turned the tables. The fired clerk's final email was indeed the CEO's undoing, but it was also my new beginning. I learned a brutal lesson. Never underestimate the person doing the grunt work, because they're the only ones who know where all the bodies are buried. So, that's my story. I played the corporate game, and when they tried to cheat me out of my hard-earned win, I finished the game myself on my own terms. Like this video, if you were on my side, celebrating the downfall of corporate nepotism and greed. Subscribe for more stories like this where the underdog finally gets their justice. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Did I go too far? Or did I do exactly what needed to be done? I'll see you all in the next story.